Open the podcast bay door as hell.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 190 of Welcome to Geektown. I'm your host, Kurt Onstead. We're on to episode 5 of Agatha All Along and my deep dive with Joel L. And we start by naming the episode and discussing all that it represents. Darkest Hour, Wake Thy Power.
Back to the original version of the ballad, whatever that means, or at least the version that seems to be less commercial but more popular, the one that actually opens the door.
If you're going by the YouTube titles, that is the Sacred Chant version, as opposed to the
Lorna Wu.
rock. Well, they refer to it online as the cover version, because it's not Lorna Wu.
Right.
It's
our coven.
It's the coven covering Lorna Wu's version.
Right.
We have never heard Lorna Wu's.
I was actually on a website that lists the songs in each episode. It said that the Lorna Wu version was in episode 4, and the only time I can think of that would have happened is playing backwards from the record.
Okay, yeah, that's true. Oh, somebody needs to isolate that and reverse
And see what it actually sounds like.
Yeah.
And email your file to...
So, before we start into the actual episode, we get our previously on, which is previously on.
Yes.
As we start with a WandaVision clip.
Which I was so excited. Yay, we finally get more about her coven.
Her origin story.
Yeah, well, I had a couple of reactions to the previously ons. First was, yay, we get more about the coven. Second was, I really liked how they put in the stuff about the coven after the words previously on, but before the words previously on Agatha All Along.
Yeah, they don't actually give the title card of previously on until after that. And we get some more of the Salem 7 at that point.
Which, of course, is kind of an uh-oh.
Yeah. And starting into the episode, we get more of the Salem 7.
We do.
They are on the road.
Which is a huge uh-oh. But in the previously on, there was a minor discrepancy.
Okay.
Which I don't think was a mistake. When this happens, I think that it's an intentional choice. In the previously on, instead of saying, what if we summoned a backup Earth Witch, Agatha says, what if we summoned a backup Gray Witch?
Subtitles say green.
Okay. I was not paying attention to the subtitles at that moment. I'm sure it's a nothing thing, but it was notable.
Okay.
And then, yes, oh my God, the Salem 7 are crawling out of Sharon's grave.
So that's the doorway that Lilia refers to when she says, when we did the spell,
we left the door open. When the Salem 7 came out of the grave, they kind of gathered around and picked up an onyx thing from the ground. I don't recall that being a thing before, do you?
No, I don't. I have no idea what that would be. Maybe some component to the ritual that they had cast.
Yeah,
but you'd think if that had been the case that they would have noted it before, when they actually did the ritual.
Right. Yeah, the only thing that I remember them actively using in the ritual was candles, so maybe this is a candle holder or something. I don't know.
Nah, it didn't. I mean, it didn't look like a candle holder to me. It
Nor to
looked
me.
like just a regular onyx
Clump.
crystal gem, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, again, probably unimportant, may have been used in a previous edit of them doing the ritual, but it was kind of a strange thing.
Mm-hmm. And the Salem 7 that we see in this first bit here are the fox, the raven, and the snake. And, well, we'll get to it when they actually all show up, but I think it's interesting the options we have here.
Okay.
But we get their origin story from the Coven.
And it is different than what we know from the comics.
Yes, very much so. Rather than being related to Agatha by blood, they're related by blood in a different way.
Right.
Agatha killed her own coven, including her own mother. Rio pipes in because her own mother tried to have her executed.
Rio vacillates a little bit during this episode. Am I defending? Am
Oh,
I
Rio,
attacking?
yeah. She is all over the place. I have notes on that later. But Agatha spared their young children, and so they became a feral, hive-minded coven bent on revenge.
That's intense.
Yeah, I love that story. I think that's a brilliant connection to Agatha without making it the original comic book story.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the original comic book story would work given what we learn about Nicholas later this episode.
Right. And Agatha's response to this background story lightens the mood a little bit, but also gives some foreshadowing. She says, always finish what you started. Also, mercy is overrated. All right, pack up your shit, swish, let's go. And this time it works.
Yes, the swish of the cloak does get them going, but it doesn't last long because they are trapped very quickly. So it's time to pull out another ritual. I love this back and forth between the teen and Lilia
Oh my
and
God, yeah.
all of them here.
And man, Teen is very well studied in all of this stuff. I mean,
Yes.
if I was in this situation, I would say, broomsticks. He uses I assume, ancient witch's term, hexenbessen, which does mean witch's broom.
Mm-hmm. I have a friend who doesn't actively do it anymore, but for a while made brooms specifically for witches
That's pretty cool.
and referred to them as besoms. So it is the right term here.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Hexenbessen spell, and I think it's really interesting that it is a paired spell.
Yeah.
You can't do it on your own.
Mm-hmm.
It requires a coven and seems to require a coven of even numbers. Otherwise, one gets left out.
Well, I suspect they could double somebody up, but then you end up with an extra.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm with you. I love Lilia's everything this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Her rants this episode are fantastic. All of the things that she goes on and on about during the episode, including this. And as she's explaining why her generation, which is odd because there's like 2 or 3 generations in this coven, but whatever, hates the Hexenbessen so much. And then she finishes and Jen says, and they're basic. Which, coming from the woman who's trying to compete with Goop, is, I don't know.
Is Goop basic?
I have never been fully clear on how one defines that term anyway. I figure that as much as if I can say, hey, a Karen would love that, that's probably basic. And,
okay, fair enough.
And that's who Goop is aimed towards.
Yeah, all right. But that wasn't Jen's passion. That was just her way of living the life she wanted.
Yeah.
We saw that earlier when we found out that her materials were not as organically put together as she had advertised. If this was actually her passion, they would have been organic.
Right. Speaking of Jen, we've got Agatha explaining to Teen, who brought up the idea, it's all about selflessness, Teen. And then Jen says, "Oh, is it? Tell us more." Man, oh man, does she have a Hexenbesson up her butt this episode.
She, the fact that she showed up at all is surprising at this point because she hates Agatha.
Yeah.
Alice lets Teen join in, and he's just like, yay!
I can do it too. I can do it too.
But before they finish, the owl shows up.
Oh boy. Or I guess, oh boy.
Oh.
Sorry, I know.
The branches that they use for their brooms are massive compared to what I usually see.
Well, that's because they're not taking branches, they're taking roots.
Right, yeah, but they're able to use them to knock that 7 member away.
Yeah.
They are giant clubs.
Which, again, there's some hand waving here. If these roots were that strong and powerful, they wouldn't have been able to just yank them off the tree. But, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, these are rotten roots that are on the Witch's Road.
But they're not so rotten that they can't be used as a club.
Right. I would feel like the Witch's Road would make roots specifically to be made into brooms.
Right. Yeah. There's, like I said, some hand waving.
Yeah, that's fine. And so they try flying off the road.
They take
for a
off.
little bit. Yeah. And we get that beautiful blood moon
yeah.
shot.
Well, we've got to get off the road. Dude, rule number 1.
Yeah.
You laid it out.
Good
so
point.
Clearly.
Yeah, and the road says, no, you're not taking the easy way out.
Right. But as you say, we get that beautiful shot across the moon, which it was gorgeous. And does everybody have to use that shot? We got it in E.T. We got it in Batman. It's everywhere anyone flies. Come on.
Yeah, but I think it was good to point out the blood moon beforehand, visually,
True.
before they say it in the show.
Yeah, that's some good foreshadowing. That was well done.
And besides, it's just a gorgeous shot. Of course you're going to take it.
Oh, sure. And then Teen jinxes everything. Why haven't we been doing this all along? They're done.
Yeah. And it's funny because they assume that it's the road forcing them back, and I think it probably is, but the way it works where they basically like turn upside down and are forced down, one of the Salem 7 in the cast list is credited as Salem 7 Vertigo.
Oh, yeah, that makes way more sense. That's awesome.
So it may be that was what did it rather than the road.
Yeah.
Although we don't see the Salem 7 at that point, so maybe not. It could be that they were correct in their assumption.
Yeah, we don't see them there, but then they go in for a landing in that one that transforms into a swarm of bees, where everyone says, "Hey, look, bees! Let's open our mouths really wide as we're flying in so we can scream at it."
So I went through and I made a mental note of all of the Salem 7 that we've seen.
Okay.
So we have seen wolf, raven, snake, rat, fox, owl, and bees. That is 7. If you look at the cast credits, it is coyote, not wolf,
Okay.
Crow, not Raven. Crow, Raven. I mean, it's close enough.
Sure.
Fox, owl, rat, snake, and vertigo.
Interesting.
So the bees are vertigo.
Okay.
Or it's one of the other doing some other spell that has nothing to do with their standard forms.
Sure.
But if it is vertigo, then the fact that that one was there when they land back down on the road does potentially point more towards vertigo being the one that dragged them down.
Right. That strategically, that makes sense. Put them down in a way that they land right in front of me.
Yeah. But turning into a swarm of bees doesn't stop them at all. So
No, but it does make it so that they don't crash into him or her or them or whatever in a way that also takes them out. So it could have been a defensive move.
But we won't find that out in this episode.
No, quick, go into the next trial.
Which is, I got Friday the 13th vibes from this one.
Okay. I wasn't looking for a specific property. I was just thinking 80s slumber party.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Especially when you see them in their sleepover gear.
Yeah.
This is absolutely 1980s and in kind of a ramshackle cabin sort of thing, which is why I went to Friday the 13th as my go-to, especially from the teens outfit.
Sure.
It looked very much like something out of that movie. Although it also draws references to something else, which should have made the reveal at the end much more obvious.
Okay.
But we'll get there when we get there.
Curses.
Speaking of curses, Alice suggests that they play Kiss, Marry, Kill. And I was like, oh, come on, MCU. You broke the F-bomb barrier in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. You could have... you could have said the actual name of the game.
Okay, but still,
Yeah, I mean, it would have moved it from TV-14 to TVMA, possibly. But still, I don't know. It just... Whenever they make an obvious substitution like that, it always pulls me out of the story. And so I wish that they could throw that sort of thing in there without it being now we must raise our rating. It's just, I don't know.
I can see that, but I have heard the game referred to as Kiss, Marry, Kill.
Okay. I think I've only heard it referred to that way when they are specifically avoiding saying the word fuck.
And now your episode needs a new rating.
Which I'm not going to do. And at this point, we find out that Teen lost his spellbook.
He did. And Agatha says, forget it, you can take the training wheels off, which kind of hinted to me even the first time that the title of this episode, Darkest Hour, Wake Thy Power, was going to be about Teen.
Well, I think it has multiple interpretations.
Oh yeah, the Alice is in there too.
And Agatha.
That's also true, yes.
So, definitely multiple ways you could see it. Man, this episode goes fairly quick. It's
the shortest episode we've had so far. Even with the 5 minutes of credits, it's only 33 minutes long. It's quick, but it's dense, and man, oh man, does this one pack a punch?
Oh, definitely.
Small but mighty.
Yeah. Now, this is the first time that Teen doesn't actually find the invitation to.
No, it's kind of thrust upon them.
Yeah. The Ouija board flies out, and Teen picks it up and reads the instructions, but he's not the one who's like, hey, look over here.
Right.
And that looked like a fairly well rendered, or maybe even a found actual 80s copy of the Ouija board box.
Right.
It has William Folds' name on it, who is often credited as the inventor / patenter of the Ouija board, although others got to it before him. He's just the one who finagled the legal system well enough to take the credit.
Yeah, as is the case in several board games of that era.
Yeah. Now, Teen reads the rules here, and I think all but one of them get broken
I
at some
noted
point
that
or
too,
another.
yeah.
They're not good at following rules.
No.
I mean, that makes sense for this coven, especially, but I do find it funny.
Yeah.
Speaking of finding things funny, I loved, what's that say on the back there?
For ages
For
3 and up.
3 and up.
Yeah. I everything about this was just so well thought out. I love that the instructions start off with Spanish and then Chinese before going to English.
Yes.
It's just
Yeah.
beautifully done. But yes, the rules: don't use it alone, don't speak over each other. Ha ha ha. I mean, we know these people. Don't taunt the spirits again. Ha ha ha. Don't ask about death. Always end your session with goodbye. And don't take your hands off of the planchette, because if you do, a spirit will be released.
And when they say, don't taunt the spirits, everyone looks at Agatha.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, which was a funny moment, but let's be real, every one of them could have done it.
Oh, absolutely. I think the only one who wouldn't would be Lilia,
Right.
but most of them have that kind of biting, sarcastic humor to them,
Yeah.
which they all have fairly dark pasts.
Mhm.
That's gonna be how most people deal with that sort of thing, is to put up that wall of sarcasm.
Right.
But they sit down and do their first try at activating the board.
We have to Ouija.
That's not a verb.
And this
That's
was
fine. I verb nouns all the time.
right. There were so many times in this episode where my brain immediately went in and said almost exactly what was said just after that. And this one,
Yeah.
it was, we have to Ouija, and my brain said, you can't verb that. And then Agatha says it's not a verb.
Why can't you? I mean, what would be the verb of Ouija?
I don't know. I used to be what is often referred to as a grammar Nazi, and it took me many years to come to the conclusion that if language is not evolving, that's because it's dead and not in use.
Yes.
And therefore, like anything that evolves, it changes, in the way that it's being used and portrayed changes. And if the point of language is to communicate, then whatever makes that works. I've become much more of a linguistic pragmatist. So yes, you can verb anything as long as it gets your point across.
The academic terms for that are prescriptivist versus descriptivist. If you are a prescriptivist, you believe that words definitions are
Set in
prescribed. They are set in stone, and they mean what they mean, and no changes should be made. While a descriptivist says, as long as you are describing what you want to get across, you can use whatever language works.
Yeah.
I'm very much with you on that. I was a prescriptivist when I was younger, and am much more of a descriptivist, although I still have my occasional moments where I'm like, there is spelled like this, there is spelled...
Yes. And for crying out loud, literally should mean literally.
I'm okay with that one, because it's said with a different tone of voice. When you literally mean something, or you literally mean something, you can hear the difference between when it means literally and when it means figuratively, to me.
I understand it.
It's harder in written language, but... All right, but we're getting off the topic here.
That's so unlike us.
Oh, I know. Agatha moves the planchette around.
I'm not moving it. Are you moving it? God, that is such
Yeah.
a classic Ouija board thing.
Oh, absolutely. Have you played with a Ouija
I
board
have
at
not.
all? Okay. I have done it, and it can get pretty weird. It doesn't feel like anybody's moving it. But Agatha is definitely moving it in this case,
Oh,
as we
yeah.
find later, to pretend that it's Mrs. Hart.
Which, the very fact that that's what it spells out tells us it's not Mrs. Hart. She doesn't think of herself that way.
Right, right. She's Mr. Shart.
Oh, tell me you came up with that just now.
I mean, I came up with it the first time I saw them do it, of spelling out Mrshart. I was like, Mr. Shart.
That's awesome.
Uh,
It's just a random person we've never met and
yeah,
happens
yeah.
to have that name,
It happens to have a horrible last name.
which happens.
Yeah, yeah. But she gets pretend possessed.
God.
And I think she does Catherine Hahn does a great job here of channeling Deborah Jo Rupp's portrayal
Right.
of Sharon. I mean, she goes a little overboard with it.
Just a little. Feeling
but
better? Alice, how's your face?
Hey, girl.
God, Agatha's really having fun with it too.
Yeah, yeah.
And when this happens, my thought was, wait a minute, oh my God, is Sharon's spirit actually coming to guide them? Of all of the predictions, was Kurt right about that?
At first, I was like, yes, I called it. Oh, no, this is not.
Yeah, same. I caught on about it right about when Jen and Alice did.
I think I caught on at Facebook conspiracies. I was like, okay, she's being a little too self-effacing here. This does not feel like Sharon. It's a good imitation, but it's not her.
Right.
And Rio points out that Agatha is scared. And that's what brings her back and says, okay, fine.
Right.
Let's do this the right way.
Now, at this point, I have to share a story about what happened when we were watching the episode.
Okay.
So Rio calls her out. She says, fine, let's get on with it. She sits down. They all place their hands on the planchette and the file freezes.
Oh no.
And we're sitting there for a good minute and a half laughing more and more because that's just we're positive we're seeing the actors twitch and move a little bit, but it's just stuck there with all of them with their hands on the thing. And as it would just have been so funny if they spent 5 minutes with them just sitting there not doing anything.
That also could be accurate to
A Ouija experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was just, and like I said, it got funnier and funnier the longer it lasted until I finally was like, wait a minute, and I hit the remote control and the file wasn't moving, it just had glitched.
Right, yeah. I had a similar experience once. There's a movie called A Simple Plan. If I remember right, it's written by the Coen brothers and directed by Sam Raimi.
I haven't seen it, but I'm familiar with it. Vaguely. I mean, I know of it.
I was doing the press junket, and so I went to go see a screening, and they get to the scene where the two brothers are confronting each other, and that scene starts, and it's this instrumental music, and then you see them start talking to each other, and you don't hear what they're saying. It's still this instrumental piece.
Which is totally in line with both the Coen brothers and Sam Raimi.
Yeah. We're thinking, oh, this is an interesting choice. And then somebody in the audience pops up and says, okay, I've seen this movie before. This is the audio is messed up. Let me tell you what's happening right now.
Nice.
And then sure enough, right after he says that, that movie theater, radio guy comes up and says, this is, this song by this artist. Now let's get. So someone runs out and is like, audio's broken.
Right.
But yeah, humorous moments caused by glitches.
Yeah. Anyway, we rewound and pressed play, and
Yes.
the show actually continued, and I was a little
Yes.
disappointed. But this time, even the spirits take this more seriously.
Yeah, the lights flicker as Agatha says, "Who is here with us tonight?" D-E-A-T-H.
And of course, Rio laughs.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, if we're going off of my theory, she would.
Oh, yeah. She's like, well, I am here, but I'm not the one controlling this.
Right. Dean, we're not supposed to ask about death. Shh.
Yeah. Dean is very much a rule follower.
Yeah. Which is...
Until the end.
Yeah. But they do that thing where even when it doesn't always make sense for them to continue, there's 4 or 5 voices reading off the letters as they're being highlighted.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want? P-U-N-I. So, yeah, okay.
But, I mean, that's what you do. I don't know what it is, but it's a communal experience, and so you all do tend to say the things out loud as they're happening.
And it also makes sense because the planchette's viewfinder, based off of what we see, is kind of a narrow thing and not always clear from whatever angle you're at. So getting verification from the people around you that you're seeing what you think you're seeing does make sense.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, what do you want? Punish. Who do you want to punish?
Big surprise.
Agatha. It's like a...
Wow, that would make
weird,
her a totally different feel.
Weird cheer. Agatha just repeated over and over and over again until Agatha lets go. Well, and the planchette flies around the board.
Yeah, well, when we're doing this, we do get them breaking that rule of talking over each other, and this is when they start bickering. And then Agatha breaks the rule by taking her hands off the board.
And then they all let go, and the planchette keeps flying around the board. Mm-hmm. And then the board flies off. And we get another Lilia moment here.
That one cracked me up.
I hated this the first time. Mm-hmm. Teen's like, Lilia's being weird again. And the little moment I love is Jen removing her retainer.
I wrote that down too. That was so perfect.
It's that classic 80s bit of somebody has to have a retainer. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Jen removes her and she's like, well, this is what they're asking for. Let's punish Agatha. And the chaos immediately stops when she suggests that.
Mm-hmm. And she really gets to vent her feelings at this point.
Oh, absolutely.
Punish Agatha. It's how we beat the trial. And after everything she's done, the lies, the cheating, the complete and utter lack of humanity. That last one I take issue with. But yeah, it is what it is. It's obviously
it's definitely how Jen feels.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those bias confirmation things. She felt that way going in, and she's only looking for the things that'll confirm it. Teen does try to defend her, though. There has to be another way, and then Lilia comes in with, well, we could tie her up.
All of the punishment options there, and I love Agatha's response of, and people ask why I don't have female friends.
Yes. We were getting along. We were clicking. There was unity. And Jen starts hammering in the nails into the coffin. Familiars don't get a vote.
But while they're busy arguing, Agatha disappears.
Yeah. That last line, though, familiars don't get a vote. Is that Teen's role? And if so, does that bring us back to that line that you and I were discussing from the ballad, that didn't really fit in before. Primal night giveth sight familiar by thy side. If teen is the familiar, then they're fine with that.
Right. Agatha refers to him as her familiar
As her
at
pet,
one point.
yeah.
Yeah, in this episode, she calls him pet, I think a couple of times.
Yeah.
But as we'll learn later this episode, he is no one's familiar.
No.
But before we can get there, we have to finish this trial here. And like I said, Agatha disappeared, the lights go out, and she is on the ceiling.
Yeah. Jen's trying to call Wolf here. She's faking it.
Well, this moment, especially Agatha's makeup on this, Catherine Hahn's makeup on this, gave me very much Exorcist / Evil Dead vibes.
Absolutely. I'll swallow your soul.
But apparently all you have to do to get the lights back on is flip the breaker switch.
Right. Which, again, Rio kind of flips her own breaker switch again. She was suggesting slitting Agatha's throat, and now, sweetheart, you okay?
And the next bit, she's on the defensive for Agatha again, because Agatha's mother's ghost comes floating down.
I hate ghosts.
Which, again, to your theory, ghosts are people she didn't collect.
Yeah.
So, some interesting thoughts there. I can't wait to find out if you're right on that one.
Yeah.
I will be very impressed if you...
You and me both.
But yeah, Evanora, Agatha's mom, says they have to finish the Witch's Road without Agatha. And this is when I specifically noted how Rio is going back and forth on Agatha this episode, where in the retelling of the origin, she defends her, then she wants to slit her throat, but mom can't have her. It's make up your mind.
Yeah. And when Evanora, Agatha's mom, shows up, Agatha's right in there taunting the spirits.
Oh, of course she is.
It was nice having you in my body for a second there. I've never felt so close to you before.
Well, even from the very beginning there with her, hey, mom.
Right.
The way she talks this entire scene here felt like a teenager embarrassed about her mom. Which is very fitting given how the scene is playing out.
Yeah.
How the trial is set up.
So yeah, Evanora says you've got to continue without. Then Rio comes to her defense. And yeah, well, her mother can't have her. At that point, Evanora starts moving towards the coven, and Agatha once again does something that is selfless but only subtly. This is subtle enough that Jen wouldn't notice it, but overt enough that it's pretty clear that it's happening. She is getting Evanora's attention to try and get her to stop moving towards the coven.
Yeah.
And that's when she asks, Mom, why do you hate me still?
And this is what puts most of the coven on her side, is Evanora's response. You were born evil. I ought to have killed you the moment you left my body. That's basically the worst thing any child could hear from a parent.
Yeah.
And like I said, most of the coven at this point is on Agatha's side now.
Briefly.
Well, Jen is the holdout. It feels like if Jen had gone with them at this point, that they could have defeated the trial then.
Yeah, potentially.
But instead, Mom possesses Agatha again. And Alice cries out, leave her alone, and activates her magic, which seems to surprise her as much as it does everyone else.
I agree.
Now, Alice isn't bound or had her power taken away like Agatha has, anything like that. So, did she have this all along, or...
I think so. I think that her binding was self-inflicted. When she stopped believing, she lost access to that magic. And then through these trials, she has started believing more and more again, and now she has access. So she uses it and is like, oh, I guess this is real now.
Or was it that she defeated the curse?
That's true. If the curse was binding the magic, then her mom's line, "I can't protect you."
Makes sense.
Yeah. And that would be a good reason to enlist her quote unquote coven to continue casting the spell through playing that record.
Yeah. Now, Lilia gives us another tarot reading here.
Knight of Wands.
This one,
It's complicated.
it's complicated. It feels right for the moment,
Mhm.
but then that moment passes very, very quickly because the upright keywords are courageous, energetic, charming, hero, rebellious, hot-tempered, and free spirit, which I think fits Alice's reaction and what she does at that moment.
Yeah, I found a different set of words, but they were essentially the same thing, and I had the exact same response. Yeah.
But like I said, that moment is so brief because while her magic blasts Agatha's mom out, almost immediately afterwards, Agatha starts absorbing Alice's magic.
And I was of mixed minds at this moment, at how this moment
Okay.
plays out, because Agatha, her response in that second could be interpreted a number of ways. She looks like she's kind of surprised and she's feeling the energy and she actively chooses to start taking it. It really does the way she moves her hands and just starts
Mm-hmm.
grabbing the power and transforming. It looks like a conscious choice, but it also could be a reflexive thing, like when the coven attacked her when she was a kid.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, but I do believe it when Teen says, "Make it stop," and she can't. She says later, "I couldn't make it stop." He doesn't believe her, but I do.
Yeah, it's one of those moments that you really can interpret it either way.
Mhm.
You can look at it and try to see the best of Agatha and say, this was out of her control, it was reflexive. Or you could look at it and say, no, as soon as she felt the magic, she wanted it and she started taking it.
Which could also be an unconscious thing. It could have been she felt the power, needed the power, I must take the power, and then saw who she was taking it from. Because for that split second, she was still coming back to herself after having been possessed.
True, but she doesn't stop herself until she gets an outside force.
Distracting her or taking her. Yeah. If that was how that played out, again, up to interpretation, because it's clear that when she does stop, Alice is drained.
Oh, absolutely.
So it could be that that would have been when she stopped anyway.
Potentially. Yeah, it's hard to say.
Very. But before she stops, the Ouija starts moving on its own, and
And Teen notices that.
he notices it and decides to go work on it solo, which is another one of the rules broken. But he doesn't place his
Well,
hands on the
yeah,
thing.
I was going to say, he's not interacting with it, he is just observing it.
Yeah.
And sees that it spells out Nicholas Scratch. Thankfully, it was at the beginning of a cycle, so he didn't spell out Alas Scratchnik.
Right. Ola Scratchnik.
Hola. Nice.
So when this happened, when he was spelling out Nicholas Scratch, when the Ouija board was spelling out Nicholas Scratch, the thought that occurred to me was, did Agatha accidentally kill her own son the way that she's accidentally killing Alice?
I think so, specifically because of what happens next. Teen yells out Nicholas Scratch right as the timer is ending, and Agatha stops and turns around, and thanks to the subtitles, we hear Nicholas as a child yelling, "Mama, stop."
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what happened. Is she absorbed Nicholas's power at some point. Now, whether she did stop or not when it originally happened is an interesting question.
Yeah.
And one I think we will find out in probably episode 8.
Right. Again, another gut punch intense moment.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
And then Teen has the sense of mind, the presence of mind to move the planchette to goodbye. And we finally
Yes.
get one of the rules from...
One rule stays intact.
Yes! And that triggers the door to open.
Yes. The stepladder out. It looks like the stairs to an attic.
Yes.
I guess this was probably like a basement or something.
That was my interpretation as well.
Yeah. But unfortunately, Alice did not survive that interaction.
No, and everyone's upset, but Teen is pissed.
Yeah, Teen absolutely turns on Agatha at this moment. He was her defender up until now.
Yeah.
But he's just like, no, you killed her. You could have stopped. And Agatha walks out.
Yeah, and we get that close-up of Alice's face where she looks like she just looked at the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah. And now we're back on the road. And now Agatha conjures a little bit of Alice's magic because it has that kind
coral
of
red,
orange-pink coral color.
Yeah.
But it fades away. And it makes me wonder, because when Agatha confronted Wanda, she would take the magic and it would turn purple. And then whenever she blasted with her magic, it was purple. So why is she getting the coral color here rather than it being hers?
A number of different possibilities. But yeah, that definitely raises questions.
And this is where Teen confronts her, and this is the big confrontation of the episode. This has always been about power, hasn't it? And Jen notes, of course it is. That's what it's always been about for all of us.
So that's what it means to be a witch, killing people to serve your own agenda. No, not for me. And then Agatha starts to grin and she twists the knife. Are you sure? You're so much
like your mother.
Which, when did she realize? And when did she figure out? I think that that's why she walked away from Rio at the end of the last episode, was she was putting it together right then.
I could see that. Well, and his outfit this episode helped. Here is a page that shows Billy in his costume.
Okay.
And the outfit that he was wearing in the cabin was a gray shirt with red sleeves and a big headband.
Okay. Yeah. That's a pretty close parallel. I'm just flipping back and forth between images of him in the episode and this costume, and it's pretty clear.
And we saw him in that costume in the Halloween episode of WandaVision. So she knows how he dresses. So yeah, I think that definitely could be a clue for her as well.
I agree.
And yeah, she gives that line and walks away, turns around, says, "Come, pet." And no, you don't call Billy a pet.
Apparently not when the training wheels are off.
Because he starts generating blue sparks, and then he takes over Jen and Lilia. You can see the blue in their eyes as they grab Agatha and throw her off the road.
Very much like his mother in the Avengers Age of Ultron thing.
Yeah, but Agatha is absorbed into the ground, and then Billy uses his magic to toss them off the road as well. And they all drown in the...
They are all absorbed by the area around the road that isn't the road.
Yeah, I mean, when Agatha gets drawn in, we get this moment of an air bubble coming up and popping and then nothing. Obviously, the show is not over yet, and the show is about Agatha, so Agatha's not dead,
Right.
but we're certainly given the impression that she and Jen and Lilia are.
Yeah.
And Billy now has his crown.
Based on the image you just sent me, it's not the crown from the Wiccan's costume, but it is very
No, it's
clearly a copy of the
of his
Scarlet Witch's
mother's.
crown.
Yeah, but in blue instead of scarlet.
Right.
He's the Azure Witch or something.
Something like that. So we get that moment of he's wearing a crown, at which point you say, "Hi, Billy." And then we get the song, "You Should See Me in a Crown" by Billie Eilish.
How they find the perfect songs.
They really did well with that. And that is the episode. That's where it ends.
Those are our ending credits. Now, I did note something, which is Rio wasn't there with that last scene.
No, she was not.
Was she still in the cabin? Is she going to be the ones to rescue them? What happens next? And she's got to be involved somehow.
Absolutely. I have a theory that I'm pretty sure is wrong.
Okay. Please tell me your wrong theory.
The show is titled Agatha All Along. In this episode, we see a character, Billy, taking over someone's mind, which brings us back to this idea of projecting images into and taking conversations with and all of these things out of someone's mind when it's not happening in reality. Has any of this happened? Or is Billy still duct taped to Agatha's chair?
I really hope that's not the case.
I hope that too.
I am not a fan of "It Was All a Dream."
I am with you, and I think that would be a major removal of the quality of the series as a whole. But it fits. So I think and I hope I'm wrong on that. But it's a possibility.
Yeah.
And
well,
considering
we'll find
we
out.
have 3 more episodes, and almost all of our main characters have just ostensibly died,
we have
4 more
3
episodes.
more weeks. We have 4 more episodes.
Yeah, we're halfway through, and almost all our main characters are dead. So something is wonky.
Dead. I'm putting big air quotes around dead.
Well, it is a Marvel property. I get it. And we've had theories from the beginning that a lot of the aspects of the road have been customized for teen.
Right.
So it would make sense for this to all be in his head.
Maybe.
It's my theory, but I don't like it.
Perfect. My theory is that next episode we're going to get Rio coming out and somehow rescuing them. And this will lead into a reveal of who Rio is.
Yeah, I mean, if she drags them all out of the ground and says, "I just couldn't take you," then that is a not insignificant moment.
Yeah, exactly. Or if she goes down to hell and says, "Dad, I need these guys."
Right. I think it would be hilarious if the next 4 episodes are all teen having having no way to finish the road anymore, just being a part of the trials for other witches that walk by.
Hi, I can help. I'll find the trial for you.
Sure. Or him being the trial in some way. I have to be the challenge that causes problems for everyone else.
Yeah. But if Billy is as powerful as Billy in the comics, then he doesn't need the rest of the Coven.
Fair.
To finish these trials. Because as I've mentioned in previous episodes, Billy can basically rewrite reality by just saying what he wants enough times.
How deep does that go? Could he decide that they aren't dead?
In the comics, he could easily say, bring them back, bring them back, bring them back, and they could come flying out of the goo, and depending on what happened to them down there, they could be fine.
Yeah, this action of taking over people's minds, forcing them to kill somebody, and then killing them himself feels out of character for the teen that we have gotten to know. And therefore, it could be just a reflexive, I'm pissed off and I'm lashing out. Oh crap, I have to fix this somehow. And then he does. I could see that.
That's true. But it fits in with the story that they've told of Wanda. When Wanda came fully into her powers, she decided that she was going to do what she wanted to do and do it by any means necessary.
Yeah. Because we have to take that movie as canon, yeah.
So is Billy now the big bad?
It sure looks like it.
Yeah? Hopefully we'll get some sort of redemption, because I want my Young Avengers.
And you're not alone. There's lots and lots and lots of people who've been clambering.
Now, what I really wonder is, assuming that we are working towards a Young Avengers, where's Tommy? And how are we going to introduce Hulkling? In the comics, one of the strongest relationships portrayed is the partnership between Wiccan and Hulkling, or Billy and Teddy. Hulkling is a half Kree, half Skrull prince who is heir to both empires.
Huh.
And he is eventually Billy's husband. And Billy is now, in the comics, the prince consort and high advisor to the leader of the Kree and Skrull. And it's hard to imagine them doing a Young Avengers without that relationship there, because it is such a part of the original book, and it is such a part of who Wiccan is in the comics that, like I said, it's just hard to imagine them doing all this and not bringing in that relationship somehow.
Yeah, I don't know.
And again, the other relationship that Billy is best known for is to his twin brother. So if Billy is here and grown up, where is Tommy?
And I'm sure that will be addressed at some point, assuming we don't kill Billy. But from a meta perspective, we know the titles of the next two Avengers movies. We know kind of what the pacing and slate is of the Marvel cinematic movies, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Young Avengers would almost have to be a Disney Plus show.
Right.
At which point, there's all kinds of things they could do in ways that we could get these characters reintroduced. And I mean, you've got more time that way.
True. Very true. Yeah, I mean, it could be Young Avengers, The Hunt for Tommy.
Sure.
We got that tease at the end of the Marvels, but there hasn't been any real movement on the Young Avengers that we've seen.
Right. Which is consistent with Marvel this phase of, hey, we're making huge sweeping changes and then totally ignoring them for years.
Little frustrated at that?
Yeah. I mean, it's probably the biggest problem with the MCU since Endgame, that nothing seems to matter.
It feels a lot more disconnected than the previous phases.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, that feels a bit more like the comics.
Right.
You know, in the comics, you have like the cosmic titles that all kind of tie into one another, or you have the street level heroes who, you know, will cross over a little more often, but don't tie into the X-Men or don't tie into the cosmic level or the magic guys.
Right.
So it makes sense because the universe has gotten so big.
Mhm.
It's not just the Avengers anymore.
Yeah. And they have been consciously making those distinctions. The Doctor
Mm-hmm.
Strange characters are dealing with things that the rest of the superheroes wouldn't be dealing with.
Right.
Uh, I mean, they're doing that, but at the same time, there are huge sweeping somebody at some point should have noticed that there was some kind of astronomical weirdness going on in Egypt when suddenly the sky changed its time frame by thousands of years, and nobody said a word. There's this huge thing coming out of the ocean from the Eternals, and nobody's played with that. Uh,
But that's coming up in Brave New World.
okay.
It did get a blink and you'll miss it Easter egg in
It
She-Hulk.
did, but so did Wolverine.
Right. But other than a brief mention of it, what would they do? If it's not going to be part of the story that they are telling in that movie, in that TV show, what could they do?
If they hadn't destroyed the concept of damage control, it could have been
Right.
an entire storyline in their TV series.
Yeah. But then that would be the story that they're telling in that show. In a show like Agatha All Along, when and why would the celestial body come up as part of the conversation unless they are focusing on it, unless they are making that part of the story? Agatha's been away for 3 years. She hasn't no idea that it even happened. It's not important to her goals at this moment. There's no reason for it to come up in the story.
Yeah, you're not wrong, and it's still unsatisfying.
I understand that, but like I said, as someone who's been into the comics for so long, that happens all the time.
Sure.
In the X-Men books for the last like 5 years or so, the X-Men have been living on a mutant island, have their own sovereign nation, and are offering any country that acknowledges them as a nation, including the US, which did so, free medical treatment that basically cures all diseases. People still get sick in the other books. You get this occasional one-off sentence saying this is happening, but it doesn't truly affect, it doesn't really change the whole Marvel universe as a whole, because the X-Men are trying to tell their own story, and it would mess up everyone else's story if they acknowledged it and tried to actively play along
I
and make it part of theirs.
I get that, and the comics have however many decades worth of history of doing that kind of thing. The MCU has 10 years worth of setting up expectations. So if
16, just to point out.
well, the last six are
It's
since Endgame. That's what I'm
right.
talking about. The 10 years between Iron Man and Endgame, everything counted, everything mattered, everything impacted everything else. And now we get Wakanda's prepping to go to war with Atlantis or whatever they're calling it, and no mention of it anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's what is the precedent in the media in which you exist? The MCU had a 10-year span in which this was what they told us to expect, and then they suddenly decided it wasn't going to be that way anymore. So I get it, but it's still disappointing and unsatisfying.
Yeah. Although there are, even in the phase 1 through 4 sections, there were movies that were completely separate and big things happened in them, but they weren't acknowledged necessarily.
Yeah.
I don't know. I definitely see your point, but I think it's getting to the point where we should acknowledge that that's not the status quo anymore. They have given us 6 years of this.
Yeah. And the truth is, it's not a sustainable method.
Yeah, it's not a sustainable model. You can't keep tying everything into one another and building, after Endgame, what's next? You can't go bigger than that until you do something like a Secret Wars. And to do something like that, you have to do a rebuilding phase. You have to bring it all back together again. But before doing that, you have to introduce all these new bits.
Yeah.
You have...
Absolutely. And don't get me wrong, I love these things. I loved Moon Knight. The stuff that they're doing is great. It just feels different. Disconnected, yeah. If they had actively said this is no longer the integrated MCU and it's now a Marvel something else, that may not have felt as disjointed. But like I said, you're absolutely right. It's been 6 years. We should get over it and accept what is the case now because it's good. It's just not what it was, and what it was great.
Yeah.
And when you're used to great, good is a disappointment.
And I think they'll get there again. I think when we have Doomsday and Secret Wars back to back, as we build up to that, we're going to see more of the connectedness between projects.
And it has been intentional that there hasn't been an Avengers movie since Endgame.
Right.
You're absolutely right. Those characters' stories are essentially done, and we have to develop new characters to have stories. And then you can bring them together.
Absolutely.
And that is what they did in phases 1 through 4.
And they've kind of gotten away from talking about the phases. That is more of a fan thing these days than a Kevin Feige thing. But instead of calling it Phase 5, what they should have done is say, this is Cycle 2, Phase 1.
That would have
something
worked.
Like that.
If they had said that at Comic-Con, I think they would have gotten a lot less backlash.
Yeah. But
well.
That's
hindsight's 2020.
That's hindsight. Exactly. We can say that now and be like, aren't we smart? But going into that, it's so hard to make those sort of predictions and know what the right thing to do was ahead of time.
Sure.
We got off topic there at the end, but I know the issues Joel brought up about the recent MCU movies and shows is a discussion that has been happening in the fan circles, so I wanted to put my own 2 cents in. I cut even more discussion not related directly to the show, and even a little that was, but didn't feel vital to the episode. And if you want to hear all of that, you can do so at patreon.com/welcome to Geektown, where it's only $1 per month to join. And if you want to share your thoughts on the episodes we've discussed, or have topics you'd like to hear about on future scripted episodes, you can email those to welcometogeektown, all spelled out, @gmail.com. Or you can go to the website, welcome to, the number 2 in this case, geektown.com, and click the submit a question link if you'd prefer to remain anonymous. Other contact options include facebook.com/welcome to Geektown, Twitter @GeektownPodcast, Mastodon @Welcome to Geektown @mastodon.social, or my personal favorite, Blue Sky @welcometogeektown.bluesky.social. You can also help the show grow by subscribing and giving a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts to join the Geektown City Council, which helps other people find the show so we can all tell them,
Welcome to Geektown. Population, us.
Welcome to Geektown is written, narrated, edited, and produced by me, Kurt Onstead. Theme music is by Aaron Levitz, logo art by Archie's Antenna. All other sound clips are the copyrighted material of their respective owners, and no infringement is intended. falling under fair use.